My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old and live in a small town about 50 minutes outside of Boston. Every morning, I brew myself a strong cup of espresso, turn on the weather report, and walk 2 blocks to the headquarters of the biotech startup I co-founded. To outsiders, it might sound impressive, but to my family, all of it was reduced to a single, indifferent sentence. Emma is doing something with computers, I guess. In their eyes, I was always the dry, aloof little sister, hidden behind a laptop, buried in endless meetings, never glamorous enough, never good enough. I wore little makeup, preferred simple clothes, and rarely had exciting stories to tell. Meanwhile, my older sister Sophia, 3 years my senior, was the jewel of the family, graceful, stunning, soft-spoken, and endlessly charming. In every family photo, Sophia stood at the center like a masterpiece, while I was little more than a forgotten shadow lingering at the edges. During family holidays, compliments rained down on Sophia like blessings. "Sophia, you look gorgeous." "Sophia, your new boyfriend's a doctor? Amazing." And me? If anyone noticed, it was only to mutter, "Emma's doing something in healthcare tech, I think," as if mentioning a footnote no one cared to read. For years, I convinced myself that if I worked harder, stayed quieter, carried the burdens without complaint, maybe, just maybe, they would see me, acknowledge me, be proud of me. But they never did. They never asked about the nights I spent in the office until midnight, salvaging million-dollar projects. They never asked how it felt to help build a company from scratch with my closest friends. They simply didn't want to know. When strangers asked me about my family, I would give a small, empty smile and say, "We don't talk much." Not because I was hiding anything, but because there was simply nothing left to say. My family had become experts at excluding me with a kind of cold, bureaucratic efficiency, as if cutting me out was nothing more than another item on their to-do list. For a long time, it hurt. Deeply. I clung to the belief that family was something you could always come back to, that no matter how far you drifted, the door would always be open. I was wrong. It took me years and countless silent heartaches to understand that being someone's daughter, someone's sister, should never come at the cost of your own dignity. The day I chose not to answer their demands, not to clean up their messes without thanks, not to lower my head just to be tolerated, was the day I chose myself. Emma finally broke an invisible promise, the one that had kept her chained to their indifference. And in choosing herself, she found a kind of peace they could never give her. That afternoon, after placing her phone down, Emma sat quietly by the window. The soft spring sunlight poured through the white curtains, but it couldn't warm the hollow chill settling inside her. Her father's words kept echoing. "If you insist on coming, don't call me your father anymore." It was a clean, cold cut, severing the final thread she had so desperately clung to. For 2 years, Emma had quietly sent money to her parents every month, paying for electricity, water, internet, even covering unexpected repairs like a broken fridge or her father's car maintenance. She had done it not out of obligation, but out of love. A part of her had always hoped that if she worked hard enough, gave enough, endured enough, then maybe, just maybe, she would finally be seen and loved. But that phone call shattered everything. It wasn't that her job wasn't prestigious enough to introduce to Sophia's new boyfriend. It was that Emma herself, in her family's eyes, had never been someone worth holding on to. Emma opened her laptop and logged into her bank account. Her fingers trembled slightly as she methodically canceled each auto payment. Electric bill, canceled successfully. Water bill, canceled successfully. Internet and cable canceled successfully. Each notification felt like a quiet, final period at the end of a long, painful sentence. Silent, like the way her family had always been when it came to her. As night fell, Emma didn't cry. She simply sat there, wrapped in the quietness that now felt more comforting than suffocating. There were no calls asking if she was okay, no apologies, no explanations. Only curt, impersonal messages. Internet's out. Call the provider. Power's down. Fix it quickly. Emma flipped her phone face down and took a deep breath. She was no longer bound to these cold demands. She had played the role of the silent rescuer for far too long, without anyone once asking, "Are you tired?" When her mother's birthday arrived, the house sat in darkness. No electricity, no water, no internet. Guests started arriving. Sophia frantically called and texted, desperate and accusatory. But this time, Emma just smiled quietly. She didn't reply. She didn't get angry. She didn't explain. She understood. If a small glimpse of truth was enough to crumble a celebration, that celebration had never been built on real love in the first place. In that moment, Emma realized she didn't need to defeat them. She only needed to free herself. She was no longer shackled by invisible expectations or emotional debts no one ever acknowledged. That afternoon, as the spring breeze stirred gently through her balcony, Emma brewed herself a cup of peppermint tea, sat down, and for the first time in years, she felt free. That day, when Emma walked into the office, everything seemed as ordinary as ever. She straightened the stack of documents on her desk, quickly reviewed her meeting schedule, and prepared to welcome a new transfer from the New Jersey branch. She thought nothing of it until the name on the file caught her eye. Liam Prescott. Her heart sank slightly. The name was unmistakable. Liam, her sister Sophia's new boyfriend. The man their family had been endlessly praising these past months. The very reason her father had coldly banned her from attending her mother's birthday party, fearing that Emma's presence would embarrass them. A faint smile touched Emma's lips. Life had a wicked sense of humor. She hadn't arranged this moment. Fate had crafted the perfect stage on its own. Right on time, the meeting room door swung open. Liam entered, clutching a folder, wearing a blend of nervousness and self-assurance. But the moment his eyes landed on Emma, his whole body froze. A flash of shock crossed his face. "Emma?" he stammered, wide-eyed. Emma simply smiled, calm, composed, exuding an effortless authority. "Welcome to Pacific Genomics," she said softly but firmly. "I'll personally be reviewing the financial plans for this quarter with you. I look forward to working together." Liam stood frozen for a few more seconds, his face pale, his hands tightening around the file. No one in Emma's family knew she was the co-founder and an executive at one of the fastest-growing biotech firms in the region. They had always assumed she was just another office worker. And now, the truth unfolded without her lifting a finger. No retaliation needed, no grand speeches made. Emma opened the folder, completely unbothered by Liam's stunned silence. When he eventually left the room, Emma leaned back in her chair, feeling a lightness she hadn't known in years. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't sad. She simply felt peace, because the truth had finally spoken for itself. News traveled faster than she had imagined. During a random video call with Aunt Sharon, the whole family watched as Liam blurted out, "Emma is my boss. She runs the company." The atmosphere in the house turned deathly silent, like a bomb had just detonated in the middle of the celebration. Sophia froze beside an unlit birthday cake. Her mother, flustered, nearly dropped the dessert tray. Her father turned beet red, gripping the edge of the table. The relatives, who once barely noticed Emma, now shifted uncomfortably, avoiding each other's eyes. But Emma didn't need to witness it. She didn't need to say a word. She sat quietly in her small apartment, feeling the profound peace of someone who had finally reclaimed her own worth. Afterward, messages from Sophia flooded in, angry, desperate, blaming. Mom cried all night. Liam doesn't know how to react. How could you do this to us? Emma sipped her ginger tea, relaxed and unmoved. She hadn't done anything. She had simply stayed silent and let the truth reveal itself. Liam also sent her an email, an apology, heartfelt and honest. He confessed that he had broken up with Sophia because he realized what truly mattered: respect and authenticity. Emma read it, smiled faintly, and moved on. She wasn't happy that Sophia's facade had crumbled, nor was she sad about the family's unraveling. She simply felt right, standing exactly where she should have been all along, beside herself, proud and free. One quiet Sunday afternoon, as Emma was sipping tea by her window, the doorbell rang. She flinched slightly. Unexpected visitors were rare. She rose gently and peeked through the peephole. Her parents stood outside, their faces weary and tense. Emma opened the door without a word. Her mother spoke first, her voice hoarse. "Hi, Emma. Can we come in and talk for a bit?" Without anger or urgency, Emma simply nodded and stepped aside. They sat on the sofa, the heavy silence thickening the air. Emma placed 2 glasses of water on the table and sat across from them, waiting patiently. Her father cleared his throat, avoiding her gaze. "About your mother's birthday, I said things I shouldn't have." Emma stayed silent, nodding slightly, as if listening to a speech that no longer touched her heart. Her mother hurried to add, her eyes hesitant. "Claire's been struggling. Her job, her relationship. It's been tough. We thought, since you're stable now, maybe you could." She hesitated, pulling a printed sheet from her bag. A formal request for Emma to provide $2,000 per month for their living expenses, insurance, and a retirement fund. Emma looked up, her eyes cool but not bitter. "What about Claire?" she asked plainly. Her mother faltered. "She's having a hard time. We can't pressure her the way we can with you." A faint, almost ironic smile touched Emma's lips. She understood. She had always been the one they could pressure. Claire never had to be. Leaning back in her chair, Emma replied calmly but firmly, "If Claire agrees to contribute her share, $1,000 a month, and if you're willing to sign a contract stating that upon your passing, all assets, including the house, will belong to me, then I'll consider it." The room fell silent. Her father's eyes widened, his face flushing with rage. He slammed his hand on the table, rattling the glasses. "You're setting conditions for your own parents," he growled. Emma didn't blink. "Not conditions," she said. "Principles. I've silently spent almost $16,000 over 2 years without a single thank you. If you see my support as an obligation, then I need clarity this time." Her mother tugged at her father's sleeve, whispering, "Let's just go." But Emma's gaze made it clear. There was no more room for negotiation or emotional blackmail. Finally, her father stood abruptly. "We're leaving." Emma rose too, silently escorting them to the door. No hugs, no goodbyes, no promises. As the door closed, only the soft breeze remained, drifting through the open window. Emma took a deep breath. She didn't feel pain. She felt free. From that day forward, her parents never reached out again. No calls, no texts, no apologies. But Emma wasn't hurt anymore. Their silence was just proof of a simple truth. If love must be bought with blind sacrifice, it isn't love. It's exploitation wrapped in the name of family. Emma went on with her life. Peaceful mornings with coffee, critical meetings at the company she helped build from scratch, and quiet walks down streets she chose for herself. No longer the forgotten little sister. No longer the family's backup plan. Most importantly, Emma knew she no longer had to prove her worth to anyone. She had chosen herself, and that, at last, was her true family. About a month after her parents left her apartment without a backward glance, Emma's life gradually found a new rhythm. A peaceful, steady rhythm. And for the first time in her life, Emma felt the fullness of true freedom. Each morning, she still brewed herself a strong cup of espresso and sat by the window, watching the pale sunlight slip between the aging buildings. There were no more text messages asking for favors, no more phone calls dangling unspoken expectations of sacrifice. Just the soft hum of the coffee machine, the rustling of the trees in the breeze, and the steady light beat of her own heart. Work at Pacific Genomics was busy but deeply fulfilling. Emma thrived in an environment where her competence was recognized without question, without the need for constant explanation or exhausting comparisons. Liam, now the head of finance, kept his word. Professional, respectful, and mindful of boundaries. They worked together quietly, two silent allies, never needing to revisit old wounds. One late afternoon, after wrapping up a long meeting, Emma stopped by her favorite cafe. Her usual corner was still there, beneath the wooden sign that read, "Home is not always a place. Sometimes it's a choice." Emma smiled. For years, she had believed that family was a given, an unbreakable bond of blood. But now she understood. True family isn't just about shared DNA, it's about those who see you for who you truly are and love you unconditionally. A sudden spring rain began to fall as Emma stepped out of the cafe. She didn't rush for cover. Instead, she walked leisurely under the cool drizzle, letting the rain wash away the last remnants of pain still clinging to her heart. When she returned home, she opened her laptop, but not to bury herself in work. This time, Emma wrote herself a letter, not meant for anyone else, only for her own soul. She titled it, "I Choose Myself." She wrote, "I once believed that if I was patient enough, if I sacrificed enough, I would finally be loved. But today, I understand. True love doesn't require you to dim your own light just to be accepted. I chose silence, endurance, and self-sacrifice. And in return, I was met with disregard. Today, I choose differently. I choose to set boundaries. I choose to walk away when respect is not given. I choose to build a life where I do not have to prove I am worthy of love. I choose freedom, peace, and myself." As Emma typed the final words, tears streamed down her face. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of liberation. She saved the letter, closed her laptop, and lifted her gaze to the rainy night sky. Life, vast and waiting, stretched out before her. No chains, no darkness weighing her down. Emma smiled. A real smile, radiant, unburdened, and free. Finally, she had stepped out of the shadows of the past and into the life she truly deserved. A life, for the first time, that belonged entirely to her. After all the storms, Emma didn't just survive, she truly began to live. No longer bound by expectations or judgments from her family, Emma was free to paint the life she had once only dared to dream of. Pacific Genomics slowly became her second home. Long days immersed in research projects, strategic meetings with colleagues who respected and trusted her, all of it made Emma feel she was contributing, in her own small but important way, to the world. One morning, while polishing a presentation for an international healthcare conference, Emma received an email from the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company. They wanted a long-term partnership, and specifically, they wanted her to lead the project. She was no longer the odd little sister hidden behind others' success. Emma was now someone corporations courted and admired. Yet, Emma didn't let the spotlight sweep her away. In the evenings, she still sat quietly in her cozy apartment, brewed herself a cup of ginger tea, listened to old jazz records, wrote in her journal, or read philosophy and psychology books. She understood now. True success wasn't about admiration from others. It was about feeling at peace when she laid her head down at night. Emma's friends today weren't people who appeared only during her triumphs. They were the ones who had patiently listened when she was at her weakest. Aunt Sharon, the only family member who had stood by her during the storm, would still occasionally text, "How's your day, Emma?" Liam, her former colleague turned close friend, often spent hours with her, chatting about little things like the new pastry at the cafe near their office. Emma no longer sought validation from those who had once rejected her. She realized her worth had never depended on how others saw her. One afternoon, as the golden sun bathed the narrow streets, Emma stood on her balcony, watching the hurried crowd below. A deep, abiding gratitude welled up in her heart, for all the pain, all the scars, had forged her into someone stronger, deeper, and more capable of loving herself. Her new life wasn't perfect. There were still exhausting days and invisible pressures, but she knew how to face them. She cherished simple moments, a warm cup of tea, a peaceful afternoon, a sincere message from an old friend. Emma smiled to herself. She had traveled a long road, from a girl who tried desperately to earn family love, to a woman who built a world where she was seen, cherished, and allowed to simply be. And in the misty glow of twilight, Emma whispered to her heart, "I don't need a house to call it family. I only need a place, no matter how small, where I can be myself, without permission, without apology." From that day on, Emma knew she would never be the same. She was no longer the naive girl who believed that if she was just good enough, just tried hard enough, she would be loved. She had learned that real love does not come from chasing the approval of those who only know how to demand. Real love, it begins with loving oneself. In the months that followed, Emma began building solid boundaries for herself. She no longer responded to messages only when others needed her. She no longer swallowed her tears just to maintain the image of the good daughter in her family's eyes. She understood now, loving yourself isn't selfish. It's protecting your heart from those who would only take without giving. Her career at Pacific Genomics continued to thrive. Emma was not just a leader, she became a role model for the young women in the company. Those who, for the first time, saw that a woman could succeed without sacrificing herself to please others. She spent time mentoring those struggling to find their place, teaching them how to set boundaries, how to say no without apology. One late afternoon in June, as she stepped out of the office, Emma was greeted by a golden sunset painting the peaceful streets. The breeze carried the soft scent of blooming flowers, and for a moment, everything felt pure and sweet. She stopped, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. No more burdens, no more fear, just herself, whole, free, complete. There was a time Emma thought she would always yearn for acceptance from her parents, from Claire, from those who had treated her like a shadow. But now, she no longer needed it. She no longer needed to prove her worth to anyone. Her existence, her efforts, her scars, her smiles, was proof enough. In her small apartment, where the window was always open to welcome the evening breeze, Emma wrote a few lines in her journal before bed. I don't define family by blood. I define it by those who treasure and love me unconditionally. She signed it, put down the pen, and smiled softly. A new chapter had begun. A chapter of freedom, of true peace, where Emma no longer needed permission to exist, no longer needed to shrink herself to fit into someone else's mold. Now, each morning when she woke up, Emma brewed herself a hot espresso, opened her balcony door, and welcomed the gentle light of the day. She no longer lived to please anyone but herself. And that was the greatest victory of her life. As time passed, Emma gradually came to understand a truth she had once refused to accept. Forgiveness doesn't always require an apology. Sometimes, forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, not to those who hurt you. On quiet evenings, when the city lights glowed softly and the streets fell silent, Emma would sit on her small balcony, cradling a warm cup of tea, and look back at her past. She remembered every word, every cold glance from her family, every moment she was overlooked and abandoned. But instead of pain, she now only felt a soft sadness, like a gentle rain falling over a rooftop. Emma realized those wounds had shaped who she was today, a strong, independent woman who knew how to love herself. Without the chill of neglect, perhaps she would never have learned how to stand tall, how to heal her own heart. One morning, as sunlight spilled through the curtains, Emma woke with a strange feeling. Lightness. There was no more resentment, no more longing for an apology that would never come. She decided, today she would let go, not because they deserved it, but because she deserved peace. She took a piece of paper and wrote a letter, not to send, but simply to give voice to the things she had buried for too long. I forgive you. Not because you apologized, but because I refuse to carry this burden for another day. When she finished, Emma folded the paper and dropped it into the fire of her old fireplace. The paper burned brightly, curling into ashes, carrying away all the old anger with it. That day, she stepped outside wearing her favorite pale blue dress and a pair of comfortable flats. She allowed herself to blend into the bustling crowd, smiling at strangers, ordering a latte at her favorite cafe, and sitting by the window where she could work and quietly watch life unfold. No more invisible chains binding her, no more asking herself, why wasn't I enough? Only Emma, whole, peaceful, free. Forgiveness, she realized, was not forgetting. Forgiveness was acknowledging what happened and choosing to no longer let it define her life. In her heart, Emma knew she didn't need anyone to validate her worth. She didn't need an apology to know she deserved love, respect, and a life lived fully. And that was the greatest gift she could ever give herself. The day Emma decided to close the door on her past, a soft rain fell. It wasn't loud or violent, just a gentle shower, as if the sky itself was washing away all the old burdens clinging to her soul for so many years. She sat on the steps in front of her small apartment, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. Everything around her was familiar. The rustling of the leaves, the earthy smell of rain-soaked ground, the shimmering reflections in tiny puddles. But inside Emma, something had shifted forever. She thought about her family, about the years spent exhausting herself trying to earn acceptance, love, and recognition. Now, Emma understood. She no longer had to fight for any of it. The silence from them, the harsh words that once made her cry, were now nothing more than distant echoes, powerless to hurt her anymore. Emma exhaled a long breath, shedding an invisible, worn-out armor. She smiled. Not the strained, polite smile she used to wear, but a real one, deep from within her heart. She had forgiven. She had let go. And now, she was free. Free to live for herself. Free to pursue the dreams that had once been buried under years of fatigue. Free to love herself wholly, without shame, without hesitation. Emma stood up, her legs feeling lighter than they had in years. She stepped inside, opened her old wooden closet, and pulled out an empty suitcase. Empty. Yet to Emma, it was packed with endless possibilities. Without hesitation, she began gathering what she needed. A few light dresses, an old journal filled with scribbled dreams, and the world map she had once pinned to her wall during her college days, the map she used to stare at for hours, dreaming of distant lands. This time, she wouldn't just dream. She would go. She would write her own story, step by step. That evening, Emma sat by her window, watching the last raindrops slip down the glass. She picked up her pen and wrote a single line in her journal. Today, I choose myself, and I choose freedom. No one could ever take that away from her. Not anymore. Tomorrow, when the sun rose, Emma would head to the airport, board the first flight she chose, and land somewhere she had never been before. No detailed map, no rigid plan, just her free heart to guide her. Because at last, Emma understood. Happiness isn't something you wait for others to give you. It's something you walk toward yourself, arms open wide, ready to claim it. There are mornings when Emma wakes up, sunlight streaming through the window, painting soft golden trails across the floor. She sits up, wrapping herself in the blanket, quietly gazing at the clear, blue sky outside. A strange feeling washes over her. Peace. No more fear of judgment, no more heavy shadows of unmet expectations weighing on her heart. Emma used to believe her worth was defined by others, by the rare compliments, by the fleeting recognition from a family long accustomed to coldness. She had once buried herself in work, exhausting herself to be good enough, all for the slim hope of hearing someone, anyone, say they were proud of her. But today, Emma knows. She doesn't need that anymore. Her worth isn't measured by praise or external approval. It lies in the moments she chose herself, when she stood up after being rejected, when she worked tirelessly with no audience to applaud her, when she said no to protect her boundaries. All those silent victories, unseen and uncelebrated, have woven the woman she is today, strong, independent, and quietly proud. Emma brews herself a cup of coffee, the warm aroma filling her small kitchen. She smiles, thinking of the days long past, the days she allowed others to define her. No, she's no longer that girl. If they can't see her worth, that's their limitation, not her fault. If their love only comes when she fits their mold, then it's not real love. Emma has learned to love herself unconditionally, the way she once wished others would love her. She opens her laptop, starting to plan new projects, not to prove anything to anyone, but simply because the passion within her still burns bright, waiting to ignite. Every step she takes from now on, Emma knows, is for herself, for her dreams, for her freedom, for the unshakable self-respect that cannot be bargained away. She understands now. She doesn't need anyone's approval to have worth. She doesn't need anyone's comfort to be resilient. She doesn't need anyone's permission to move forward with strength. Outside the window, a gentle breeze carries the sweet scent of a new spring. Emma sips her coffee, breathing in deeply. It took her a long time to get here, and she quietly tells herself, "Emma, you've done so well, and you deserve all the beautiful things coming your way." A new journey awaits her, one that doesn't require permission, doesn't need acknowledgement. It only needs a heart strong enough to believe that true worth always comes from within. In life, we often strive endlessly to seek validation from those we love, believing our worth is tied to their approval. But Emma's story teaches us a profound lesson. Your worth is not defined by others. It is defined by how you see yourself. Emma's silence wasn't weakness or defeat. It was a powerful choice. The decision to walk away from toxic relationships and say, "I deserve respect." She didn't seek revenge, nor did she scream to be heard. It was her calm strength, her quiet self-respect, and her willingness to set boundaries that made those who once dismissed her finally take notice. Life will often put us in tough situations where we must choose between pleasing others or bravely loving ourselves. And as Emma proved, when you dare to set limits and say no to unfair demands, you're not just protecting yourself. You're teaching others how to treat you. If you're feeling overlooked, undervalued, or waiting for someone to recognize your worth, remember this. You don't need anyone's permission to live your truth. Give yourself the freedom, the love, and the respect you have always deserved. Let Emma's story be a reminder. Sometimes, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's a sign of true growth. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. Don't forget to like the video, share it to spread this positive message to more people, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more meaningful stories like this one. You never know. Your story could be the light someone else needs to find their own strength.